Welcome. This is just a quick video on how I landed a cybersecurity role in about 6 months of study. I just wanted to make a quick video to give some of my insights to shed light as to what my process was, what the journey was like for me, as well as how people who are in similar positions can do the same thing. Results may vary. So just a little bit of background on me and who I am. I'm currently an undergraduate student. I'm studying computer and informatics. I'm also doing an advanced dual degree program to grab my master's with a concentration in cybersecurity. Just a disclaimer, this is not a how to do it with no degree tutorial or how to do cybersecurity with no experience. Personally, I think that those videos are scams considering how saturated cybersecurity is. I think that you should put the work in and you will get the result. The timeline may be different, but that's typically the formula. Put the work in, get the result, you reap what you sow. With that being said, I do have my associate's degree in computer and information systems, as well as my network plus and security plus certifications. Just to give you guys a little bit of insight into what my journey was like, I started studying cybersecurity seriously in about September 2024. It took about 6 months before I started seeing actual results from the work that I was putting in. Now, how did I get into tech? Funny enough, in high school, I was way more into the arts. I liked history, I liked writing, reading and comprehension. I liked arts and crafts, working with my hands. But when I got to college, I wanted something that was going to challenge me just a little bit more, push me beyond my comfort zone. I did take courses in high school in technology. I personally was like, you know what? It's not for me. I wasn't good at it at first. And I think a lot of what makes people come to that realization is the teachers they have and the format in which they're being presented their education. So my first year in college, I was taking primarily business courses, but I eventually decided, you know what? I want to switch and I want to do something else. So I started taking computer science courses. Through this, I got experience with programming. I learned Java. I learned some C++. I eventually went and did some self-study to learn Python. So I dibbled and dabbled with self-study in basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript. A lot of my learning at that point in time was coming from YouTube. I would watch like those 10 to 24-hour courses that were just deep dives into the fundamentals of these languages and these programs, but I would never go much deeper than that. So my fundamental knowledge was there, but it was very shaky because I didn't apply it much further into projects or into anything else beyond that course itself. And that was until a mentor introduced me to cybersecurity. The main benefit of this was I had directed study from someone who had years of insight into the field, had hands-on learning because he had a very intricate home lab setup that he allowed me to have essentially free reign with. And that was extremely helpful for my learning because instead of just reading about routers and switches and firewalls or doing online simulations with them, I was able to physically hold them, physically configure and set them up, and that helped to conceptualize these technologies just far better than any simulation could have captured. So how I began learning cybersecurity personally, it was a lot of coursework that helped to lay the foundation, that helped to kind of give me a general outline of things that I may want to do. It also helped with exposure as well. Depending on where you base your cybersecurity learning from, you can get exposure in different fields. I know some people who took courses in pen testing and ethical hacking, some people who took courses. I took a course in digital forensics. Not too crazy about it. It's definitely an interesting concept, but I personally wouldn't make it my career. As the tech landscape changes, they're starting to introduce more AI and machine learning into cybersecurity as well. So how I learned was mainly a mix of coursework, self-study, and hands-on learning. The coursework did a really good job of outlining what to learn. I wouldn't say it necessarily did the best job of teaching me the information. What I will commend it on doing though is exposing me to various fields within cybersecurity. And it's so funny, people always ask me, oh, so you're doing cybersecurity, so you hack or you do this or you do that. Cybersecurity is very, 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 very broad. It's like saying, oh, I study science or, oh, I study biology. It's like there's so many different tracks within cybersecurity. Even if you just want to take something very small like firewall and just focus on firewall, you can make a whole career out of that because it's a lot. It's a lot, and the profundity of knowledge that you can uncover, especially the way technology is evolving today, it's something that you will never, ever exhaust fully. As for self-study, that was literally me taking a book. My mentor had a lot of the books because he He's also a instructor as well for this stuff. And he had a lot of books. And what he would do is he would allow me to take some of the books, whatever I needed. I would just sit down in the basement where we are now and just study. This is not a video on a shortcut. I know the timeline was very condensed, but it's not a shortcut by any means. And then also, as for hands-on learning, as I mentioned, my mentor did have a home lab set up. I recall when I was learning subnetting and VLSM, we would just sit down in the basement, me and my cousin, and we would configure the routers with various hosts. We'd give it an IP address and say, okay, this is your domain, this is how many hosts you have. And we would just practice. That went on for like 2 days straight until it was ingrained in the back of our heads. And now that's something that we know, we understand how to read it. And that's just kind of the process that we took. So we were like, okay, we know what to do to learn that. Let's take that same level of discipline, that same level of drive, and apply it to other things. So when it came to now routing protocols, it was the same thing. When it came to how to configure the switches and how to configure the routers, it was the same thing. And that also leads me to my second point. The fastest way to learn cybersecurity is to be in environments where the information is freely flowing. This could be different learning communities, just being around people who are talking about cybersecurity, who do cybersecurity, people who are just as obsessed with learning as much as you are. That's what's going to facilitate your learning the most. And I always say, iron sharpens iron. So some of my advice for beginners, people who's looking to also get into cybersecurity, what I would say is to start with networking. You're going to want to understand IP addressing, DNS, subnetting, things of that nature. And then from there, I would say learn Linux and Windows fundamentals. That's very important. Linux is something that's also used a lot, especially in like IoT devices and other embedded systems, as well as Windows, which is the most common operating system out there. And then from there, I would say you can move into security fundamentals. Security fundamentals is mainly logical, is how you defend your network. So it's not complex, and that's mainly it. I would say focus initially on building a very strong foundation. Don't rush the foundation, because as you look to specialize, if your foundation is shaky, it's going to be just so much harder to build on top of that, because you're going to constantly have to go back and say, oh wait, what is this? How do I calculate how many hosts are available in the subnet? How do I do this? How do I do that? Build a solid foundation first and then specialize after that. So my study approach for studying cybersecurity, studying the concepts and everything like that, I was introduced to a lot of concepts through my coursework. I like the textbooks because the information is already logically outlined for you to follow. And as you progress through it, you can identify, okay, this is a topic I don't understand. Then from there, I would probably take that singular topic, Google a YouTube video on that, and watch hours on that YouTube video until I can break down that concept and then reconstruct it. And what I mean by that is, for instance, I use ChatGPT a lot to basically explain what my thought process is when I'm dealing with stuff. So for instance, when I was trying to work through the different layers of the OSI model or the TCP/IP model, I would explain every single layer, its distinctions, and then I would go and also explain how each layer interacts with each other. That helps you so much to have an understanding, especially when it comes to troubleshooting, how things are working and really understanding the different nuances of these different concepts. And that can be taken and applied to many things in cybersecurity, many things in life in general. But I digress. So personally, me, I prefer the old-fashioned way, pen and paper. I ran through a number of those little marble composition notebooks, and even I almost fully worked my way through a 5-subject spiral notebook when I was studying some of the topics on the CCNA exam. But aside from simple studying, application is key. You should be able to apply the concepts that you're learning to real life ideas. And that's why even if you don't have a home lab setup, I highly recommend going and trying different things like packet tracer, drawing or designing topologies on paper. Anything that you can do to make that knowledge that you're trying to chew on stick and easier to digest. What you really want to do is make sure that the knowledge that you're taking, you're applying it to something. That's what makes the difference. It doesn't matter what you cover, it's how much you can retain. And so if you're learning but you're not retaining knowledge, you're running in place. This summer, what I'm actually looking to do is build my own home lab setup. I'm going to use this to really get deep and into the weeds on things that interest me: virtualization, automation, a little bit of cloud as well. That whole entire process, from even building the PC that I'm going to use as my main server, everything is going to be documented. So I'll invite you guys to look at that as well. So let's talk about certifications. Certifications are good to say, hey, I know this, but it doesn't replace real experience. So certifications do just that. They certify that you have the knowledge in something, but it doesn't by any means replace real experience. If you're studying networking, even if you barely scrape by and you barely pass your certification, but you don't really understand the concepts that you're learning, it's gonna come back to bite you eventually. I've had interviews where, to sound smart, I try to kind of juice up some of the work that I've been doing, and oftentimes the people who are interviewing you are higher level, and they can easily run loops around you if you don't know what you're talking about. So an important thing is to make sure that you're not just throwing things out there, you're not embellishing, you're not just trying to put extra relish on it that doesn't belong. Don't do that. And I'll talk more about that in another point later in this video as well. So for beginners, I would stress getting your Security Plus and your Network Plus. I think that these are great beginner certifications. Simone Bees, who I follow on Twitter and YouTube, she definitely stresses these as well. They're perfect for getting into the field. A lot of times when I go on interviews and they see, oh, you have your certifications, it's something that they do like to see. They may question you a little bit just to see where your baseline of knowledge is. And that's why I do stress making sure that you're not just getting them, but that you actually have the knowledge and the information to back it up as well. If you're looking for some stuff that are a little bit more specialized, I would say you can also look into some cloud certifications like the AWS cert or the Azure certification as well as your Linux Plus, Pentest Plus, different things of that nature. So let me talk now as to what the job search process was actually like. So I got my Security Plus certification late December, and I got my Network Plus in late January, exactly 1 month apart. And if you want to know about the process as to how I did that exactly, I have another video linking to that as well. After I got my Security Plus certification, I applied to a whole bunch of jobs because I was so excited. I really wanted to go out and kind of see what that would do in the job market. Absolutely nothing. But after I got my Network Plus, it kind of did help as well. And it also depends on what level of job you're targeting as well. I was going for internships. I'm still in school. I needed jobs that was going to give me a little bit more flexibility with my time, especially given the credit load that I was doing. If you're going for more entry level jobs, chances are you're going to want just a little bit more in your resume. Some projects go a long way. So yeah, just to reiterate, I targeted internships and student positions that required about 0 to 2 years of experience. Even the jobs that are saying 0 years of experience, and this is something that I do also want to kind of get into, even the jobs that say they require 0 years of experience, that doesn't mean you shouldn't know anything. It means that you may have not had prior work experience before that. You should still have a solid foundation in networking and security concepts, Windows, Linux, things like that. It takes a few months to learn. I mean, if you're consistent with it, but it does go a long way as well. So a lot of the things that I would see jobs that would say, oh, for sophomore students, even in college, they wanted realistically, I would say 6 months to a year of like dedicated self-study. That's what it would need, I feel, to grab those type of roles. And you can probably milk it in even a shorter time frame depending on how you work, what your work ethic is, what your methods are. I would say for most internships and student worker positions that require about 0 to 2 years of experience, they're looking for you to at least bring some foundational knowledge to the table. And I feel that that's where a lot of people get misled. Although it may say 0 experience, they're not looking for 0 knowledge. Those are two different things. So I was customizing my resume constantly. One of the things that definitely helps in your job search is customizing your resume for every job that you apply to. Now, if you're applying to an internship position, chances are your resume is going to follow a common baseline or a common standard from application to application. But at the same time, from each application that you send out, there may be something that you want to emphasize in your resume over something else, depending on what's in the application. So it's your your job to read the job description and to actually understand what the recruiter is looking for. And then based off of that understanding, tailor your resume to that. And if you're having trouble, chat GPT. And if you're having trouble with a resume, send me an email or drop a comment in the description or whatever. No, that doesn't even make sense. Drop a comment on this video and I can send you a solid resume template that you can follow and just fill in. Obviously, don't copy it word for word. Listen, when you're writing and you're crafting your resume, don't lie, but don't hold back either. Your resume is not the time to be humble. Not that I'm ever humble, but we digress. So also just some tips and tricks as well, just to kind of get them out the way. If your phone is on do not disturb, which mine was for a very, very long time, there's a high chance you could be missing out on opportunities. A lot of times recruiters, especially for high volume jobs where they're getting a lot of applications, they may not be calling you back. They may not even be leaving a voicemail. And that leads me to my second point. Make sure your voicemail is set up. I literally had a recruiter tell me, yeah, I tried calling you. And it's so funny. We were playing phone tag for like a few hours because he called me and I missed his call. I called him and he missed my call, and I called him again and we're going back and forth, and we finally got on the phone. He was like, yeah, just so you know, you don't even have your voicemail set up. So he was trying to leave me a voicemail and he couldn't even do that. So that's like the things that you don't even necessarily think about, but it is something to also just be aware and be privy to. So that was a bit of a rookie mistake, but you live and you learn, and I'm letting you guys learn from my mistakes right now. So you're welcome. So I had applied to hundreds of jobs up until about March and nothing, literal silence. But then spring break came. And I started getting a whole bunch of callbacks, emails. I had a whole bunch of interviews over that week of spring break, and I learned a lot from it. So in terms of what my interview strategy was with these roles, I studied for interviews by looking at the job listing. So for instance, there could have been some technologies or software on the job listing that I wasn't familiar with. I would go on YouTube, break out my notebook and my pen, and I would just study. So for instance, in my coursework, I was not introduced to a lot of infrastructure as a code platform, such as Ansible or Terraform. That was something that jobs were looking for interns to have experience with, hands-on experience with, and I didn't have that. So what I did was I understood it well enough to talk about it, and I explained that although I don't have experience with this particular software, I understand it. I understand what it does. I can kind of tell you about it, and if necessary, I can learn it very, very quickly. And I gave them that assurance. That goes a long way. They're not expecting, at the end of the day, you are an intern. You're not expected to know everything. Half the time when you get on the job, you're not calling the shots immediately. You're shadowing, you're watching other people work. It's really an opportunity for you. Use it as such, but at the same time, learn a lot. So I think one of the things that set me apart, you're going to have interviews where you don't know everything. You may not have experience with some of the tools or the softwares that they're asking you about. Talk confidently. And the only way you're going to talk confidently is if you back it up. So what I'm going to say is, like, even if you don't have experience, watch a YouTube video, watch someone else working with that so you understand just a little bit more of its use cases, and just actually do your research. Do your research on the company. And an underrated tip that people may not be giving you is do your research on your own resume, because all the interviews that I had, when I go there, they have a copy of my resume. My resume may have changed a little bit from what they have to what it is now. So they can be saying, okay, so I'm looking at your resume, and can you tell me a little bit more about that project? Something may have caught their eye that they're now going to grill you on. I've had interviews where I got grilled on things that I put on my resume. Thank God I was not lying on my resume, because if I was lying and they're putting you on the spot and they're asking you questions and they're trying to pick apart, essentially, they're trying to pull your card, they're trying to test your poker face, essentially. They're trying to see if they can poke holes in your resume. They're trying to see if you are who you say you are. And the only way to really pass that 100% is to be exactly what you are on paper, what you say you are. And so if you're putting things on your resume that you haven't done, oh my God forbid you're putting projects that you have not done and you don't understand, it's going to show, because especially for an internship position, they're expecting already to have to teach you. So they're going to see, okay, let me see where his baseline is based off of where he said it was or she said it was. One of the things that my mentor told me is that anything you put on your resume is fair game. So now let's get into how I got the role that I'm currently at. So I'm not going to necessarily get into a lot of details about my current role for certain reasons, but what I will say is your soft skills are going to carry you a lot further than your hard skills. And what I mean by that, you being a likable person, you being able to speak about yourself confidently, tell people what your story is, tell people what you're trying to do, and then also backing that up goes a very, very, very long way. Now, me personally, the job that I got was through a recommendation by a professor. One of the most important things that you can do is show up and do the work. I think that's the biggest thing, especially if you're young like I am. I'm 20 years old. If you're young and you don't have years of reputation to rely on, you don't have a whole bunch of projects, you don't have a whole bunch of people who can back you and say, hey, this guy is exactly who he says he is. The best thing that you can do is to show up every single day and be consistent. If I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And if I say I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there, because that gives you a certain level of credibility, and people are more likely to take a risk on you extending an offer or even an opportunity, just allowing you to be in certain situations if they know this guy or this girl is very consistent. So that's something that does go a long way. The role that I got, the job, it was a big learning curve for me. I mean, the foundation was there, but the way it's taken and applied in an actual industry, it's something that you have to take time to get acclimated to. So don't be too rigid in what you know. A lot of the times things are different in the actual workforce. So that's just another thing to kind of be aware of, to think about, but let's continue. Now, I do want to clarify, I did not go 0 to hero in 6 months. There was a lot of steps, a lot of effort that I put in on my part. That first summer, well, the summer before, so this is actually before September, before I started taking dedicated coursework to studying cybersecurity. This is also ties hand in hand with what I was talking about before, being that person who shows up. I had another professor who was doing like a summer project sort of thing, and some of the other people who learned about it before I did, they were able to get paid. I wasn't able to get paid for it, but I still was very interested in doing it because it gave me some experience. It gave me something that I can put on my resume, which I was later able to leverage in other interviews. But essentially what we did in that little summer project was we worked with ISOs, we worked with virtualization, different technologies, we set up virtual networks, and we installed that in a classroom. It was something that lasted for about a month and a half. It put me in the room with other people who were also doing work, people who were very much ahead of me. That helped me out a lot. It was a bit of a sacrifice driving back and forth. The commute wasn't exactly in my backyard either. It was in the summer. So just because of the time frame, it was hard to do a lot of the things that I would have liked to do. But nevertheless, it propelled me forward. It put something on my resume to talk about, especially when at the time my resume was not cybersecurity based at all. From that summer position that I did, showing up the way I did, especially because the professor knew that I was showing up just for the love of the game, just to get knowledge. The only incentive was the insights and the network that I was building being there. When the next semester rolled around, and this is now in September, when I started actually taking cybersecurity courses, even though I was doing a 21 credit semester, I still wanted to work, and I was able to get the junior network position on campus, which was paid. I was able to get hands-on experience now working with Active Directory, working with virtualization, working in a system where there's hundreds of users now. There's people who have virtual machines that they need to be troubleshooted, different things like that. Stuff like that gave me a lot of exposure. And I was working directly with the STEM department, which was very good because it helped me to build up my network. And that was what helped me to get exposure also to the professor, who would eventually also give me the reference to the job I have now. I'm saying all this basically to say that things are all connected, and your efforts lead to other efforts, and the success leads to other success. And so you got to be willing to take a risk. I mean, what I was telling myself at that time was, I'm just paying my dues. I recognized that I was a beginner. I recognized that I didn't have the expertise. I recognized that I wasn't yet there. And so I was willing to travel and commute far, unpaid, for that summer project, because I knew that with every step I take, with every passing day, I'm gaining more knowledge. And that was the most important thing for me. I don't want this video to run on too long. Any questions that anybody has, you can always feel free to reach out to me, drop something in the comments. I hope that you guys are just able to glean some insights from this and it helps you guys. Until next time, I'm going to start coming back to you before the summer's up. I'm going to start building my home labs. So I'll be documenting that process as well. And I want to share that with you guys. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited and I can't wait to share it with you guys. Take care.